of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology. Pursuant to the order of reference of Saturday, April 11th, the committee is meeting for the purpose of receiving evidence concerning matters related to the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's meeting is taking place by video conference, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. I'd like to remind the members and the witnesses, before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, please unmute your microphone and then return to mute when you are finished speaking. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly so that the translators can do their work. For those of you with earbuds, it'll be important to bring the microphone close to your mouth when you are speaking. And also, please make sure that you select the right channel for your intervention. So if you are speaking English, please make sure you are in English. If you are speaking French, please make sure you are in French. As is my normal practice, I will hold up a yellow card for when you have 30 seconds left in your intervention and a red card for when your time is up. I would now like to welcome our witnesses. From the Alliance de l'Industrie Touristique du Québec, Yann Hamel, member of the Board of Directors. From the Association Restauration Québec, Martin Vézina, Head of Communications and Public Affairs. From the Canadian Association of Fairs and Exhibitions, Christina Franck, Executive Director. From Festivals and Major Events Canada, Martin Roy. From the Hotel Association of Canada, Susie Greinal, President and CEO. From Meetings Mean Business Canada, Clark Grew, the Chair. And from the Tourism Industry Association of Canada, Charlotte Bell, President and CEO. Each witness will present for 5 minutes, followed by rounds of questions. And with that, we will start with our first witness, Alliance de l'Industrie Touristique du Québec. Mr. Hamel, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
In respect to member Mr. Sébastien Lemire, who invited me, my presentation will be in French.
Good morning, everyone. I am the president and the CEO of Alliance de l'Industrie Touristique du Canada. We have some transportation. We transported some 25,000 people in our 125 vehicles. We have 750 employees, but as of March 15th, that number dropped to 33 employees. I am also an administrator of the Alliance de l'Industrie Touristique du Québec, which brings together some 40 sectoral and regional associations. I would like to thank you, Madam Chair, and Madame Romado, and the members of the committee, and all of the other members of the Canadian and Quebec associations. I thank the government for the programs that it has put in place, and it has been active in trying to cope with the situation we are all facing. What is peculiar to the tourism industry is that we are at high season right now. Yet, because of the understanding of our employees, and they are the wealth of our industry, the backbone of our industry, we have been able to work, but at a reduced rate. We cover the whole of Canadian territory, and our type of production is very different from other associations in that we have certain days where we can operate, but they cannot be duplicated. So if a tourist can't come on the day, it is not duplicated. So we are in an unprecedented situation. We require the support of the government because our business model is such that we are struggling in this situation, but we believe that there will be a very strong recovery in Canada, an economic recovery. We can expect that only for the province of Quebec, there will be some 1,500 jobs lost in our industry, which represents a loss in economic terms of some $11 billion. This can be dealt with in two ways. We have recommendations. Our recommendations deal with two existing programs, and what we are asking for is an amendment to those programs. The first deals with the workforce, and the second deals with the economic aspect. We would like to have an extension of the wage subsidy until August of next year. And the spring of 2021. We believe that the recovery is not going to begin until the spring of 2021. We need support. Our season ends, and the present support ends in November 21st. Now, the second thing that we want to deal with is the method of calculation. The 30% figure has been put forward from the 75% figure, but that represents 12% over the period of time that we are dealing with. So the exemption rate of 75% we feel should be maintained until August 2021, but with the multiplier of 1.12 into the spring. You know that the new wage subsidy has a basic component, and a multiplier, if you like. That is very important for us. Something else that is important is the broadening of the program, the large enterprise program, the LEAF program. If you have a business of at least $5 million, 30% as of April 1st and March 31st, 2021, these businesses are different from the tourism industry. That is the regional economic engine that is involved in the tourism industry. The proximity is also of import, a maximum of 5 million. I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Amel, but your speaking time is expired. I thank you. The LEAF program is one that should be looked at with a moratorium on the cap. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Amel. The next group is the Association de Restauration Québec. Mr. Vézina, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, too, to the members of the committee for having invited me to be here today to speak about our industry. Our association is one of the oldest restaurant associations in Canada, and it is the largest in Quebec. We have some 5,000 employees in Quebec. Before this crisis, brought in some $14 billion, and it was made up of some 21,000 businesses that employed thousands of people. We believe that it is at the very heart of economic and tourism development in Quebec, in all regions of Quebec. We note that there's been a very heavy impact on our sector because of the pandemic, and I'm sure that will continue to be the same for some months to come. 80% of our members have had to completely suspend their season. Our colleagues in other areas of Canada have about 75,000 workers in Quebec alone that have been laid off, and many elsewhere as well. We have many categories that have been brought into the sales area of some 70%. there are sales of some 83% that have dropped. And with the restaurants and dining rooms in Quebec mostly closed or because of social distancing, you can't have the same occupancy rate. There is great difficulty. Not only can they not be operating at full capacity because, as I said, of social distancing, but the whole segments of their business have disappeared. And tourism, tourists that come, people now are staying home. And all the major cultural and sports events have been canceled, whether it's the Formula One in Montreal or others of that scope. We, last July, have lost 61% of our members, and we have great concerns with respect to what the future will hold for us. So, we have to fear the worst for the thousands of businesses and also the many more families that depend on the workers who work in the restaurant service. We are very grateful for the measures that the Government of Canada has put in place. It has come forward with a variety of measures like the CERB, like the wage subsidy, and so on. But today, even today, these measures are absolutely essential for the restaurant industry. With respect to the CERB and the CESB for students, it's very necessary to maintain them because many of them work for the owners of restaurants. This has become a true puzzle for the thousands of members that we have. It's become very difficult to recruit and to keep workers in our industry. But even though efforts have been made, I believe that more has yet to be done to be able to allow us all to get through this difficult time. We know that many restaurants are trying to open up again. It is very legitimate to ask for fiscal aid, financial aid for the restaurant sector. I'm not talking here about loans. I'm talking about outright aid for us to allow us to get through this time to deal with the new hygiene measures. And it is difficult, particularly in Quebec. We want to encourage consumers to come back. We know that they are going through economic difficulties, but we want to convince them to support the local restaurants in their communities. We also want to look at the various costs that are incurred to merchants, the interchange rates for the use of credit cards. We know that, like many other sectors, we are suffering, but the federal government is going to try to sustain us and other sectors. But the wage supplement should be in place, and also the commercial wage, the commercial rent aid should also be dealt with. It is too high. The figures that are attached to qualification for it is too high. They are too high. We want to be able to keep our restaurants open and to be able to welcome youth in those restaurants throughout Canada. Thank you.
Understand are sharing their time. Canadian Association of Fairs and Exhibition and Festivals and Major Events Canada, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Fantastic. I'm from CAFE. I guess I'll get us started. Thank you for inviting me to speak today on behalf of the Canadian Fairs and Exhibitions. We represent almost 800 nonprofit organizations, as well as service providers who support these organizations with entertainment, food, security, logistics, and activities. Many of you have likely been to a fair before, enjoyed the cotton candy, saw the sights of the Ferris wheel, and maybe even enjoyed an on-site concert. What you may not know is that behind this event, there is a nonprofit organization, often called an agricultural society, and often led almost entirely by volunteers who are passionate about their community and want to support its vibrancy, economy, and quality of life. These NPOs are much more than an annual event. It runs spaghetti suppers, lends the grounds for weddings, funerals, trade shows, fundraisers, and they may have campgrounds, curling clubs, or hockey arenas. We have become integral parts of the communities we are in, whether it's Vancouver or Hants County, and we support community sustainability as a result. For every dollar our organizations earn, on average, $4.54 is put back into the surrounding community. We are advocating to ensure the heritage and the physical, social, and mental health of our communities is protected. Unfortunately, the programs that have been put in place by the federal government related to COVID-19 to date have proven to be almost useless to us. A wage subsidy does little for a volunteer-run organization. A loan to be repaid in a short time frame is nearly impossible for a nonprofit to meet. We've been rejected by regional programs and redirected from one department to another. Ultimately, as you will hear from others today, we have a very short seasonal window that has now all but passed. Events specifically have one shot to generate revenue for the next 365 days, and we've lost that. We've been working with TIAC and fully support their comprehensive recovery plan. These measures include 100% back loans, extending work visas, and developing funding programs to support events. Finally, we are urging the government to provide $74 million in solvency support for our 743 organizations. This would support non-deferrable expenses to carry our industry through to May 2021, when we can generate revenue again. There's a blatant gap for nonprofit tourism support, and we hope you will seriously consider the suggestions above, as well as how to adapt the current programs to meet industry needs. Rest assured, this isn't about making a profit. It very literally is about surviving. Recovery is going to start local, and that's us. So we need to make sure we are there and ready when the time is right. By investing in us, you are investing in communities across Canada. Once again, thank you for your time, and I'll hand it over to Monsieur Roy.
Merci. Alors, en faisant
Thank you very much. With the exception of the festivals and our friends at CAFE, the festival industry is something that represents an annual income of some $1.5 billion yearly. The $2 billion in economic spin-off annually. It creates a great deal of the wealth of the GDP. And during the past weeks, CAFE Fame has appeared before the Standing Committee on Finance, where we made 5 recommendations. We believe that the Government of Canada should intervene financially through a fund that would be dedicated to reabsorbing the cultural industry's debts and deficits for these festival events. We believe that this should be similar to a not-for-profit organization that would not be held to its debt. We know that there are many associations that did not have the money set aside or capitalization available to allow them to survive this year. We know that for the moment $500 million has been announced in culture and sport, but only $15 million for general matters like festivals and so on. It's just not enough. Secondly, we want to have the importance of the wage subsidy extended, as I indicated before the other committee. Third, we want to invite the government to put in place a program which would be very much like the tourism event program that is very well known in Quebec, and it has some $225 million over three years. I know that I don't have very much time, but I'm going to just end by saying that we are asking the government to renew the additional $15 million per year that is set out in 2019 for 2 programs that helped 1,300 festivals and events. We want it to broaden the infrastructure program, which will allow festivals to survive. I'm looking forward to answering any questions you may have in a few moments' time. Thank you very much.
We now turn to the Hotel Association of Canada. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the invitation to testify today. The hotel industry represents more than 8,000 hotels, motels, and resorts. We employ more than 300,000 Canadians. We play an essential role in the Canadian economy, and we contribute tax to the tune of $10 billion to all 3 levels of government. Hotels in Canada are mostly owned by small and medium-sized businesses, usually located in the community they serve. These are local entrepreneurs, often family-run, that have invested their entire livelihood into a hotel or a local inn. Our industry has been there for our communities throughout the COVID-19 crisis. We made our rooms available to frontline workers and Canadians to self-isolate. We assisted public health in the mandatory quarantining of returning Canadians. We allowed vulnerable Canadians to take shelter and prepared several hotels to welcome post-surgical patients to assist with hospital overflow. We helped flatten the curve. Our 300,000 employees are made up of some of Canada's most vulnerable people: women, immigrants, visible minorities, and young people, all of whom have been seriously impacted by the pandemic and economic slowdown. The hotel industry has been devastated by this pandemic. We were hit first, hit hardest, and we will be the last to recover. The limits on international and domestic travel, as well as restrictions on mass gatherings, are appropriate and necessary, but do put us on the edge of survival. Most hotels in Canada today have been operating at a revenue loss of between 70% and 90% since mid-March. If government support is not received, we will have bankruptcies and thousands of permanent job losses in the industry. According to our latest member survey, 40% have only 4 weeks left before cash runs out to cover fixed costs. We are at a crossroads. That is why our association has issued a 5-point plan to keep the hotel sector alive and transition it to recovery. A copy of this plan was circulated to members in advance of this meeting. But for the purposes of our dialogue here today, I'm going to focus on 2 key critical recommendations. 1 is liquidity that works, and 2 is increased wage subsidy support for hard-hit businesses. Our industry has been cut out of the government's loan program, BCAP. Banks are not willing to loan additional debt to businesses with heavy assets and unclear line of sight on recovery. Unfortunately, our entire sector falls into that category. Hotels have had only a 6% success rate in accessing BCAP. Most hotels are being told not to apply. Our recommendation is the government fix this gap immediately. Create a new loan program for hotels. It should include streamlined access with 100% loan guarantee, loan value of up to 20% of annual revenues, a component equivalent to the commercial rent assistance program to cover 3 months of fixed mortgage payments, low interest, no hefty bank fees, repayment terms that make sense, and no personal guarantees. The CEWS program, on the other hand, is not only working, it has been a critical lifeline for hotels to keep employees on staff during the pandemic. The recent extension and addition of the top-up for hard-hit businesses was most welcome and in line with HAC's recommendations during the CEWS consultation process. However, the drastic phase-out beginning in September coincides with the exact moment when our occupancy levels are going to drop from summer travel and then flatline. In September, we will be forced to make the difficult decision to sever ties with the very employees that we will need again in a few months' time. But if the government maintained the 75% wage subsidy coverage, we could keep our employees on payroll and quickly ramp up when travel resumes. If the government is going to support these vulnerable Canadians either way, why not extend the subsidy further to hard-hit sectors to avoid the anxiety, uncertainty, and expense of mass layoffs? We are recommending that the government maintain the 75% subsidy coverage until December by applying the safe harbor principle as designed by finance to periods 7, 8, 9, and 10. This should apply only to businesses with severe and sustained revenue declines of 50% or more. Our future is in your hands. The government will be making life and death decisions for many hotels. We hope that you will recognize that not every sector is alike. It is time to transition into sector-specific support measures in order to bridge hard-hit industries like ours to the other side. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Our next presentation is by Meetings Mean Business Canada. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and honorable committee members. Meetings Mean Business Canada represents a cross-section of the business events community in Canada. We're made up of event professionals and event owners, hoteliers, transportation professionals, convention centers, airlines, destination market organizations, technology companies, and many others who make up an often invisible industry that supports the growth of every industry in our country. In addition to this, business events stimulate no less than a third of the tourism activity in Canada. The business events industry was, until COVID hit us, a $1 trillion global industry. In Canada, according to Oxford Economics, 229,000 Canadian jobs were supported annually by business events. The events that we have all attended in the past, conventions, exhibitions, congresses, and other business meetings of 10 or more. These create $33 billion in direct spending and contribute $19 billion to Canada's annual GDP. These numbers are real and should shine a light on the critical component of the Canadian economy that has been forced to shut down during the wake of the COVID crisis. This industry that brings together businesses, academic thought leaders, and Canadian citizens to exchange ideas and transact business has been shut down in the response to COVID-19. Now, I can tell you that this industry is not suggesting that we have not responded appropriately.
Mr. Grew, my apologies. Can you move your microphone closer to your mouth?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully that's better. My apologies. I'll continue. I'm not suggesting that our response to COVID-19 has been not the appropriate one, quite the opposite. The professionals in this industry are highly tuned in to the safety and experience of the attendees at business events. This is their life, their living, their career. They understand the safety of delegates in ways that no other industries do. We track our guests before they arrive, while they're in our care, and post-event. These are not festivals, concerts, or shopping malls. At business events, we are able to control where the guests go, where they do not go. We control how they interact. We control what they consume, how they consume food and beverages. We are prepared and ready to conduct our business much like the NHL has done with their event bubbles for the playoffs. This industry is well prepared to host events again. We can do it safely, and we can set a global standard for doing it right, doing it with care and doing it in a way that Canadians will be proud of. Many of the professionals in their sidelined by the protocols are struggling to get through this time. Many of them are new Canadians. Many of them are parents with kids. Many of them do not have the stability of a pension or financial supports. They are vulnerable. Canada needs our business events professionals to survive this crisis. Sadly, without direct support for the people and businesses within the business events industry, they will not survive this fall, let alone next year. Many will have to seek jobs outside of this vital industry. Just as important, Canada's industries, health, technology, energy, finance, manufacturing, forestry, etc., all rely on event professionals to bring them together with their colleagues, their suppliers, and their customers. This convening of our industry leaders is a backbone to Canada's economy, which allows them to exchange intellectual and financial capital, as well as invite the world to explore Canada's innovation, resources, and industry excellence. This fosters R&D, foreign direct investment, and trade. So I'm here today representing an industry of 229,000 Canadians that need help to survive, professionals that want desperately to be part of the solution as we restart our economy. They are passionate about what they do and what they contribute as a solution for Canada, but the clock is ticking. We have lost significant portions of 2020, all but lost lucrative the fall season, and now we're looking at a challenged first half of 2021. We are part of the solution to get Canada's economy restarted. We're a tool that the government can use to carefully and safely launch the recovery phase of the crisis that we are experiencing in the last 6 months. We can create jobs quickly and efficiently. Our asks are simple. Within appropriate safety protocols, empower this industry to convene again in safe and socially acceptable ways, in ways that bring our industries back together to once again move the economy forward. We have the protocols ready and waiting. Ensure that the financial safety nets, as we've heard already, stay in place and are accessible to a wide range of self-employed SMEs and corporations that serve this vital component of the economy, and make it easy to access these support programs. Also, third, separate business events from mass gatherings in the nomenclature around events. Then leverage the business events industry as an opportunity to bring Canadians together, and when the time is right, invite our international visitors back to Canada to experience how we care for our guests in our country. Do this by providing a federally funded business events and conventions attraction program for attracting and supporting the delivery of business events for Canada. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. And next we will go to the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. Ms. Bell, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm pleased to be here. Despite some business reopening during the summer season and talk of recovery, Canada's tourism sector has remained stagnant since the onset of the pandemic. This sector was the first hit, the hardest hit, and will be the last to recover. As other sectors and businesses see restrictions ease and revenues return, regulations that have handcuffed the tourism sector remain in place. To give you a snapshot of the devastating impact on the sector, our latest survey in mid-July, normally the high season, revealed that 82% of all respondents experienced revenue declines between 61 and 100% in the last month compared to the previous year. 68% of all respondents say that without access to government-supported financing, they'll be unable to stay in business. This survey includes all sectors of the visitor economy. Let me be clear, health and safety is paramount to this sector. It's a key imperative for our industry to help rebuild consumer confidence and restore businesses, big and small. This industry has complied with all public health regulations, with many going above and beyond by implementing rigorous safety measures to ensure the health and safety of employees and guests. And this includes hotels, air services, conference centers, and tourism operators, and others. This also at a time when critical government support programs are nearing an end and our sector continues to be denied access to government-backed liquidity. The visitor economy is unlike other sectors. We cannot provide curbside products or services, nor can we sell experiences online to keep the lights on. Today, I'm going to focus on a couple of priorities. Sustaining tourism businesses. We know a vaccine will eventually come. Until then, we need dedicated, ongoing government support to bridge us into recovery. We can achieve this in a few ways. First, by extending the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy to next summer and applying the safe harbor provision to ensure the hardest hit tourism businesses will continue to receive the 75% subsidy past the summer.
Madame Bell, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you make sure the microphone is a little closer to you?
Okay.
Thank you.
Is this better? Okay. FUSE is one of the few support programs our sector has been able to access and key to allowing businesses to keep their staff and avoid massive layoffs come September, not to mention bankruptcy. Second, BCAP doesn't work for the tourism sector, just like hotels, which are part of our sector. Across the spectrum, this is a problem. 43% of our recent survey respondents were flat out denied. More than 50% waited 3 months to hear back, and 38% are still waiting. Only 12%, all told, were approved. These businesses are deemed too risky to lend to and have been shut out of the program. Without access to government-backed liquidity, they won't have the cash flow required to cover fixed costs or employee salaries, and they're just going to go bankrupt. BCAP needs to be amended, and it needs to be 100% government-backed with a forgivable portion to cover fixed costs. Reopening Canada and enticing travel. Pre-COVID, Canada was on track for another record year of inbound visitors, bringing in more than $23 billion to the economy. Since March, we've seen a 98% decrease in inbound visitors each month. With borders closed, tourism businesses will not survive for the eventual return of regular travel, including international travel. Providing incentives to spend on tourism products will be key in making that transition a reality. The loss of inbound tourism has had a substantial economic impact across the globe, including in Canada. But many countries offer significant inbound travel incentives to pique visitor interest. For now, we need incentives for Canadians to visit their own country through tax credits. When it's safe to reopen our borders, we'll also need to attract travelers in an internationally competitive market. Destination Canada and other government agencies will need dedicated funds to ensure we're in a competitive marketplace. Finally, the ongoing bans on mass gatherings have taken their toll and will only get worse come September without business meetings, conventions, and festivals this fall. This sector of the travel economy will need dedicated support to ensure events are able to meet expectations once they're able to operate again. My conclusion is this: the visitor economy has given much to Canada. 1.8 million jobs, more than $100 billion annually, and a sense of cultural and national pride We cannot afford to lose tourism. So while we appreciate programs in place so far, we continue to need government support to ensure we're still here to welcome guests tomorrow and in the future. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move to our rounds of questions, our first round of 6 minutes. Again, we're very tight on time, so I'm going to ask members and witnesses to keep their answers in that time period because we want to make sure everyone gets a chance to ask their questions. With that, I will turn it over to MP Blake Richards. Welcome to INDU, and I turn the floor over to you for 6 minutes.
Great, thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. Now, I'll say, first of all, this industry is really hurting, and obviously it's a critical industry for our country. And I really believe that there should have been far more than one meeting dedicated to this critically important industry. And so therefore, I'll have to apologize with so many witnesses on one panel that I probably won't get the chance to ask you all a question, which is very unfortunate. But having said that, a few of you touched on this and or alluded to it. But,
Madame la Présidente.
We have a point of order. I believe we're having some difficulty hearing. Monsieur Lemire, est-ce que c'est bien ça?
Oui, et la traduction.
There's no translation. I'm wondering if it's. I'm very curious to know what Mr. Richards is talking about under the circumstances. So I'd really like to seize all the subtleties of his intervention.
You can get a little closer. Your microphone is scratchy again.
Madam Chair, on that point of order, as well, I just think it's important to highlight to the witnesses that MPs have been issued these headsets to help the translators. It's actually very painful for them to do their job without these types of headsets. Our caucuses have been advised of that, and MPs should be using these. And witnesses, just so you know, when you're speaking into your microphone, the reason they're being asked for that is because it's very painful for the translators if they can't pick up the voices properly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Massey. And I understand what we're going to try to do is we're going to switch out. We're going to go to MP Gray while we try to fix Mr. Richards' microphone, and we'll switch their rounds of questions. Mr. Richards, whatever it is you did last time, if you could try it again, because it seems to have fixed it last time. But we will absolutely come back to you. With that, I will turn it to MP Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I guess we'll start the clock as well. So thank you very much. First of all, I just want to reiterate what MP Richards had also said as well regarding having one meeting. And it's a real shame that we have 7 witnesses today crammed into less than 2 hours for such an important industry. And I just want to comment before I ask some questions that, you know, to hear from an industry where annually we have more than $1 billion to our economy that adds 2% to our GDP and employs almost 2 million people, there were the first hit, as we know. We've heard already today that there's ongoing challenges and likely they'll be one of the last to recover. And so it's really important that the government put plans together. We haven't seen any kind of plan from the government specifically for tourism. We know that the minister has basically asked people in tourism to go apply for Western diversification, which we've heard the feedback that is very onerous. It is not the same process as applying for the CEBO loan, for the $40,000 loan. We know that people in tourism, a lot of organizations, we've already heard this morning, are not applicable for a lot of the programs. And, diverting a little bit of funding away from international to domestic tourism is not a plan. And so, for us today, we don't have a plan for air travel, for seasonal tourism, for skiing, for agritourism, for sports tournaments, for events, for arts, music, historic or cultural tourism. There really is nothing. And I'm hearing from many organizations in tourism, frankly, that they're feeling snubbed. So it's really important, if we're not going to have another meeting, that others out there in tourism, if they're interested in having their voice heard, that they write to this committee, which the email is indu@parl.gc.ca, so that everyone's voice can be heard, because when we put the report together to government, it'll be very important that we have a comprehensive report and that all voices have been heard. So now I'll go to some questions. My first question, I've got a couple of questions for Mr. Benzina of Quebec Restaurants Association. And I noticed a survey on your organization's website stating that 61% of restaurants will not be able to maintain their activities beyond 6 months after their present conditions. And I'm wondering if you can let us know today if the federal government has reached out to your organization about anything, any plans, anything specific for your industry to support the culinary tourism sector.
Okay, to answer your question, and we have some talks with the Ministry of Small Enterprise to discuss what can be brought up to help restaurants owner and help restaurants. But there's no such thing for culinary tourism. We're more likely to talk about how to help restaurant owner to maintain their operation. We're not now for saying to promote any culinary tourism.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, in the Okanagan, as I'm sure in Quebec as well, our restaurants play a real important role for our local economy, including supporting local farmers and those making value-added products like cheese and condiments and alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages. Mr. Benzina, can you expand on how specifically these types of related industries would be affected by our restaurant sector continuing to suffer long-term?
You are absolutely right that restaurants has an effect on all the agri-food chains. When we are closed down in Quebec during March, April, and May, many producers and many food processing plant has been closed down and have difficulty because 20% or 25% of their sales cannot be done because the restaurant industry was closed down. So it has an impact for everyone in the agri-food chains. And their jobs and theirs that are in play, if we don't open to a full capacity in the restaurant industries, there will be an effect on producers, but also on processing plant and manufacturers.
Great, thank you. I have a question for both Ms. Frank at Canadian Association of Fairs and Exhibitions and Mr. Raw at Festivals and Major Events Canada. Last week, Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Tam, stated that even with a vaccine, we may require 2 to 3 years of physical distancing due to uncertainty. Has the federal government reached out to you to consult on any plans or protocols to ensure that fairs, exhibitions, and festival sectors can survive if this is the case? And Ms. Frank, maybe you first?
Sure. First of all, we fully support the science and what's come out. It's going to be a long road to recovery. We haven't heard anything yet from the government about next steps and plans related to this on our part.
Okay, Mr. Raw?
Yeah, well, most of the events organizers deal with the provincial governments and municipal governments as far as the regulations are concerned. Also, I think we're aware that gatherings will not be allowed for a while, but new formulas can be explored now. And as we know, events are being planned well in advance, and we need to discuss right now about events in 2021, 2022, and even 2023. So
thank you very much, Mr. Roy. That's a little bit over your time, MP Gray. We will now move to MP Assassi. You have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for their remarks today. I have to say that a lot of the statistics that we have heard are incredibly alarming, and there's no doubt that as a country, we should be doing a much better job being there for the tourism industry. Now, if I may, if I could start off with Ms. Greinall, given that you have a national perspective, you represent an association with operations throughout the country, I was wondering if you could highlight for us if there were any particular regions that are more severely affected than others insofar as the hotel industry is concerned.
Sure. Thank you for the question. The good news is that we have started to see some uptake in our resort hotels this summer, but those hotels are operating at half capacity. For example, I'm at the Chateau Montebello today, and they're running 48% occupancy, so that's their max. All of our urban hotels are really struggling. They're all operating at a loss right now. The occupancy numbers for Canada today is 38%. And just to give you a sense, like you can't run a business at 38% occupancy. That's, that you would be running a loss. So even at the height of, where we should be right now, in the tourist season, nationally, the entire industry is running a loss. So with the exception of the resort properties, everyone else is still really struggling. People just aren't traveling.
Okay, and do you also have a regional breakdown of how hard hit the tourism industry is across the country?
Well, that it actually is fairly consistent across the country. It's just bad everywhere. Unless you're in a resort community, it's bad, and everyone's running a loss. But I can certainly provide the committee with a more detailed breakdown if you'd like to see those numbers. I'm very happy to provide that to you as a follow-up.
Thank you very much. That would be very helpful. And also,
Sure.
The last question for you. Have there been any provincial programs that have been helpful to the tourism industry across the country?
Well, the two key issues that we're dealing with in terms of survival for the hotel sector right now is really access to liquidity and our employment issues. And so I guess the short answer is not really. There's not, there's been one loan program in Quebec, but it's nowhere near the kind of liquidity that we would need for an asset-heavy industry. There have been marketing programs, and that's been, helpful to the extent that they're there, but people still aren't really getting out and traveling. So, we are not seeing a lot of support at the provincial level. Other than, some provinces have allowed working notice to be a longer period of time. So that is with regards to employees. So you can push some. The clock doesn't start ticking. Some provinces have pushed that further to give us some flexibility with our employees. But other than that, we've not seen a lot of broad-based support. Certainly not for the hotel sector directly.
Thank you for that. Now, if I could turn to Ms. Bell, you also have a national association. I was wondering if you could disaggregate things for us as well. Are there any subsectors of the tourism industry that have been hit harder than others?
Thank you for the question. I would say it would be hard for me to say to you that they haven't all been hit very hard. You look at air services; they're down at single digits. Porter Airlines is not going to reopen until October. They've moved that date. Airports, again, struggling significantly. Hotels, Susie has covered that very well. And we just did a bit of a phone survey across the regions last week. And we could actually, I'm not going to go through all the statistics, but it's pretty dire across the board. And I would agree with what Susie said, except for the resort areas where they're seeing a little bit of uptick during a couple of months over the summer. Everything else is in dire straits, quite frankly. And of course, you've got Clark Gruey from Meetings Mean Business on here, who could tell you, the meetings and conventions sector is just it's almost non-existent right now because of the prohibitions against mass gatherings and safety measures in place. So it is really across the board a very, very dire situation. There's no question about it.
Thank you for that. Now, if I could go to the witness from the business event professionals, would you mind breaking it down for us as to, given all the activity and the 229,000 jobs on the line, where was the majority of the visitor economy that you were very much engaged in? Where were most of the visitors coming from? Is there a breakdown between North American visitors, visitors from all around the world, or just domestic events that you were having?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'll try to be quick. And certainly Charlotte would have some numbers on tourism as a whole. I think it's 78% of tourism is Canadians. Others are coming from elsewhere in the world. Certainly for business events, conventions, and congresses, you have a higher percentage coming from outside of Canada. So that has definitely hit us hard as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Grinnell, you mentioned that you would forward information to us. So if you could make sure that that is sent through the clerk of the committee, that'd be great. And any information that any of the witnesses want to provide with us, for instance, the phone survey that you mentioned, Ms. Bell, again, please feel free to send that to the clerk and he will make sure that it's distributed to the members of the committee. With that, I will turn to Député Lemire. Vous avez la parole pour 6 minutes.
Mr. Lemire, you have 6 minutes. Mr. Lemire? I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't hear it through the translation, but I'm sorry. I want to thank my colleagues on the industry committee for having brought up this issue of tourism and the tourism industry. It's important for my riding and for all of Quebec and Canada. I have met with many people, and a lot of with the people who are here as witnesses throughout this whole crisis of COVID-19. I think, Madame Bell, you are the one who spoke about what is having this image. We might have been the last to get off the mark, but we are going to have lasting effects. There are programs, I think, that are probably very poorly adapted to the reality of the tourism industry. We heard about the cultural industry, the culinary industry, and how that is being affected like many others. Mr. Vézina talked about the CERB and the CESB and their effects on recruiting the labor force, workers for the industry. We've witnessed that in Quebec. Those programs have to be adapted to encourage people to go back to work. And also people who have commercial rents are suffering. But the programs have created a lot of confusion. The return to normalcy will take a long time. They're talking about 2023, 2024. This is what I'm hearing from the industry. And there were meetings, and I've got many friends, particularly in Témiscamingue, who have been very much involved in international tourism. It is this need for some sort of security on a long-term basis, because the challenge that we see in the industry is how far are they going to be able to survive till we get back to normalcy? How long will they survive? They're talking about perhaps 70% ultimately return to normalcy, not 100% return to normalcy, particularly for festivals. Those festivals, to survive, you have to bear this in mind, have a very short season, just the summer. So 2/3 of them depend on that. And what's going to happen to them during the rest of the year? You have to keep active jobs for a long-term basis of this industry. And so now, here is my question. Mr. Hamel, who is a consultant from the Alliance, I heard your intervention with respect to the FOR program. We know that this is something that has been of interest. Do you think that as some sort of amendment to the program would help the tourism industry to once again get on its feet, but adapting to the new normal? Thank you so much, Mr. Lemire. I just want to answer some questions. No, not all provinces have. Mr. Hamel, could we put the mic closer to your mouth? Yes. Not all provinces have very strong measures to help the tourism industry, and that's a major problem. But the structural part is one that is the CERB that is important, and the wage subsidy. That is important as well. But what we have to define is what would be the best program to meet the challenges of the tourism industry overall throughout the country. We've had exchanges with HCC, with Charlotte, and the FOR program is one that we know, but it doesn't give access to significant building blocks for our industry, for our economy. What we want is to ensure that the wealth and strength remains in the industry, but from coast to coast. We believe that there has to be a review of the programs to make it more flexible, to make it better adapted to the real needs that exist in the tourism industry in Canada. And that represents more than $5 million. So there has to be programs. There have to be programs that are accessible. Some spoke about the programs with the banks, and they're not accessible to everybody. For example, we want businesses to be able to get back on their feet as quickly as possible. We're hearing about a program that will end in 2022 in December. The non-refundable part of that will be 25 to 50%, and that is a problem that is going to create more difficulty for the industry. It's very important because this program, I asked Minister Joly about the program. Would it be decentralized? Would it be moved out into the regions? I know that my time is up, but I will ask my questions on the next round. Thank you.
6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. And to our witnesses, I'm going to ask if you do want to, I'm going to explain a program, and then I'd like to start from an order of how you presented as whether this program would be something that would benefit you and your organizations. So I'm going to explain what it is to make sure we're all clear on the page, and then if you could then go in the way that you presented with a yes or no answer, it would be helpful. And to do that, I'm going to mention it's the Canada Summer Jobs Program. So I'm going to explain how it works for you to understand. Each MP is allocated money for this program every year. I've been doing this for 18 years, and every single year it's over allocated. So it means that I have more places that apply for the money than I have money available. But what it does provide is students an opportunity to either be fully paid in the not-for-profit sector, and with an exception this year, they also get to be paid fully in the private sector. So to give you an example for Windsor West here, right now, I actually have $3 million worth of requests, and I have about $1.2 million in money to allocate to students. So what that means is how this program works is people, including many in the tourist sector, they apply for these jobs, they're vetted by the public service, and then they come back to you, and as an MP, you have to approve them. You either change their hours by increasing, decreasing. I try to spread it out and focus on tourism and other types of opportunities for young people. And the government did do a good job this year with regards to making the program extended. It can go to February now, and it can be for part-time for the students. The reason I'm giving you all this detail is because this is the controversy that's going on with the We Charity scandal right now. The We Charity scandal, the claim is that they had to help students and get them out. But as I noted, this program is overprescribed every year. In fact, right now, when you add it up, it's been this way for several years. It's actually a $912 million shortfall that actually could be made up across this country. So the question I want to ask was related to, and the controversy is that the Prime Minister said that nobody else could do this. There's no other way of getting them out there. What I'm telling you right now, though, is the public sector has already vetted, including Windsor West, another 200 positions for students that could be funded if they did this tomorrow. And it doesn't even take any special legislation. So this is one part of the solution. So my question is, if this program was enhanced to allow students to continue to have some flexibility in extending the hours in the tourism sector and others, and paid directly for students, and we actually put the money out there now, would it be a benefit to your organization to have that program with some flexibility to deal with the challenges you have right now? So if you could start an order and tell me whether this is good or bad, yes or no, I'd appreciate that, because we've been fighting to try to get the money put into this to get those jobs out the door for the next 6 months to a year for students. But if it's a bad idea, I'd rather hear that. So if you could say yes or no so I can get through everybody, I'd appreciate that. And Mr. Clerk, if you could help assist with the order if it's necessary as well too.
So the first on the list was the Alliance de l'Industrie Touristique du Québec.
Alors, merci.
Thank you for your explanation about that program. But you have to understand at the present time we are away, 1 week away, just yet.
Dans le contexte actuel,
That's okay.
No, it couldn't help us in our context. Thank you. The next one, Mr. Vézina. Oui.
On how the Canadian emergency benefit for students is as applied, because of the problem is that they prefer to be on that program.
Okay, thanks.
Madame Franck?
Madame Franck?
Is maybe, but probably not.
Okay. Thank you.
Monsieur Roy?
Mr. Roy.
I'd say yes for now. I mean, a lot of festivals and events to benefit from the program actually.
Okay.
Madame Grunol?
I'd also go with maybe, but probably not.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Grew?
And I would say the same thing, maybe, but probably not.
And Madame Bell?
I would say the same, maybe, but it unlikely.
Great, thank you. That's important. And the reason I appreciate the witnesses being quick so I could hear from everybody, because there are some other significant problems here. So I'd go back to now to Ms. Bell with regards to the banking situation and funding. How significant is that in terms of what you're hearing from your members? So you're looking, and that's the reason I asked that specifically about that program as a micro example. But the bigger fix, I think, is what you're after, is the banking and the borrowing practices, because they have been predators. I've been fighting for credit card relief for Canadians since the beginning of this, and that's a whole other separate story. But maybe you can explain a little bit more about that, Ms. Bell.
Well, I hope you can hear me. Look, liquidity is the biggest issue that we are grappling with right now. If you put 10 things in front of me and said, but I can fix the BCAP program or liquidity, I would say, please fix that, because that is what we're hearing from everybody. As I mentioned, in the survey we did in July, and I know the Hotel Association has done other surveys also related to that program, people are waiting months to get an answer, any answer at all. And most people in the tourism sector across the board are being told, you are too risky, we're not going to take the chance. Some have even told us.
Unfortunately, Madame Bell, that you're over time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My apologies. We're now going to go to our second round of questions, and we will start with MP Richards. I see you have a different headset, and I'll ask if you could put the microphone a little closer to your mouth, and you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Okay, well, hopefully this will be better. Are we better there? Okay, well, I've got it right as close as I can. Okay, I ask if this maybe don't come from my time, Madam Chair, so we can make sure that we're sorted here before I start.
Go ahead, Mr. Richards.
Okay, so our sound is okay.
Unfortunately, no. So we're going to pause a moment, and we're going to see if what we can do there. Unfortunately, it is very scratchy again. With that, what I will do is I will go to MP Rempel Gardner for her 5-minute round while we see if we can figure something out for your connection.
Gee, it's just got thrown right into it there. Thanks, Blake. All right, thanks. Madam Chair, if I can just give me 1 second here, just so I can put my timer on and pull my notes up. Okay, I'm going to start with Ms. Frank. My understanding is that the Calgary Stampede is part of, or is a member in your organization. Is that correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And my understanding, based on the testimony that Mr. Roy prepared with regard to your proposal to the government, that the Calgary Stampede would not be part of that ask should it go through. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is your organization doing anything to advocate for groups like the Calgary Stampede, who my understanding is the differentiation between what you're asking for versus what the Stampede would qualify for is that they have some fixed assets that they use on an annual basis. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Calgary Stampede has an expanded business model outside of the scope of what we represent, and so they have their own efforts they're taking forth.
And I just realized that my headset wasn't plugged in, so it's probably giving the.
So I guess my next question would be, if the Stampede doesn't, so the Stampede is a marquee tourism event, and even though it has an expanded business model, virtually all of its events this year have also been canceled, which has put it in a pretty dire scenario. Have you worked with the Stampede, or are you aware of any other groups that are working with marquee events like the Stampede that, again, are in this type of a business model, but bring, let's say, I know in the case of the Stampede, it's close to $500 million of revenue to the city of Calgary?
So we represent the industry as a whole. We can't speak for the Stampede or for individual organizations as they stand. I do know they have their own efforts and they are having lots of conversations with the government. But in terms of marquee tourism events, we do have several who are members, and some will be able to take advantage of this. Some do have their own efforts going on.
Okay, and I just wanted to put on the record that, at a time when there's a lot of language from this government and special interest groups for, quote, my province to diversify its economy, events like the Stampede and certainly tourism, and I'm sure Mr. Richards will allude to this in his remarks as well, in areas like Banff have just taken such a huge hit, and it is a big part of the Alberta economy. So I think that there needs to be recognition that, Alberta is suffering in so many different ways, and there really hasn't been a lot of voices advocating for marquee tourism events in the province. And I know that you guys are certainly advocating for festivals that are in a lot of different rural communities, including my province, which is great. But I just wanted to put on the record that the Stampede wasn't part of that ask. The next comment that I'll make, I'm going to kind of throw my notes aside. I've sort of picked up on a theme among a lot of the presentations today, and that's that there's a lot of uncertainty in the industry, and that's precipitating a few problems. First of all, I've heard that, and I've heard this just in private conversations with other industry groups, that it's difficult to secure loans for tourism operators right now because of the uncertainty related to sort of a lack of metrics around when restrictions might considering being eased. And I'm not advocating for that necessarily, but just that there's a lack of metrics on what that would look like and under what time period. And the other thing that I've heard is with regard to loans is that banks just aren't willing to backstop that without government intervention or, the government's intervening. I'm just opening up the floor for just verification that that's kind of what you're presenting to all of the witnesses here today. That's what you're presenting to committee.
Well,
I can jump in, Madam Chair.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Susie. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Speaking strictly, thank you for the question from the hotel sector. There's kind of two key challenges here. One is that the actual regulator for the banks, which is OSFI, was not rewritten for COVID period, and so it means that they're using an old set of regulations for COVID, and so you've got to get appraisals, and it's this whole process. And so what they're saying is you're just worth 20 or 30% less. And we have heavy assets in the hotel industry. So
Right.
they're just saying you're offside with your loan to value ratio. And that means that we can't authorize you to take on any additional debt, notwithstanding the fact that the government is backing it by 80%. And then you rightly pointed out the other issue, which is there's no line of sight on when the cash flow comes back. So we're just being told don't apply.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to MP Lambropoulos. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be splitting my time with MP Longfield. I apologize for my scratchy voice and for any issues that there may be over here. Is translation working? That's the question I have before I begin. Yes, okay. So actually, my question could apply to everybody, all of our witnesses here today, and I'd like to thank you all for being here today. Obviously, there are programs that are currently in place that if they were prolonged or if they were made broader would be able to help a lot of the industries that are here today as witnesses. We also know that this may last longer than we originally expected. We may be expected to live with these conditions for the next 2 to 3 years, as was previously mentioned. In such a case, many of the industries across Canada have actually been looking for recovery strategies and have been looking forward on new ways to do business that would help them continue to survive amid this crisis. Are there ways that your industries have thought of going forward that the government would be able to help you with that are outside the box, that are not currently already being spoken about, that are not currently already in the works, that you've thought of? Basically, if you were to think of a new way of doing business next year, is there any strategy that we'd be able to help you with at the federal level? Any kind of program you foresee being useful in the future in this new way of doing business?
Well, if I may jump in, on the business events side, as many of you will know, the opportunity is to do virtual conferences, and that's where a lot of planners are leaning towards. Those are not nearly as lucrative. They don't nearly support the industry at the same level, but it is a way to at least put a Band-Aid on the challenge, on a big wound, a small Band-Aid. But it is a pivot that some of the planners are doing, and it is providing some revenue opportunities to stay alive and stay afloat.
I think that's the case for many of the businesses. I know that Uber Eats is something that's helped a lot of restaurants, and not at all. But there are definitely some online tools that have helped a lot of different industries. So yeah, is there anything? I know that a Zoom conference isn't necessarily expensive either. Is there anything that the federal government would be able to help you with program-wise that would take care of some of the more costly expenses in such cases?
Charlotte Bell here. We could certainly use tax credits or grants to help those who need to spend on putting health measures in place. Of course, this is very costly. Hotels, conference centers, attractions, all businesses have been, airports, airlines have been spending millions of dollars in making their companies safe for their employees as well as for guests. But none of what we're talking about here is going to save the industry. Again, these are maybe stopgaps, but they're not going to save the industry. The industry needs liquidity, and it needs it very urgently. I just want to make that point.
Okay, thank you very much. I will cede the rest of my time to MP Longfield.
Thank you. And I'm going to continue on that theme for this part of my questioning in terms of how the virtual format may help some parts of the industry, but not others. Mr. Roy, I'd like to maybe direct my questions to you for starters. Guelph has the Improvisation Festival and Hillside Festival that were founded in Guelph, but have gone virtual this summer. But really the compensation of the artists of going to a festival to be able to market their products, their hard products at festivals, even though the events organizers may be able to get through this, the cultural sector, the artists themselves are having trouble getting compensated. They certainly don't get well compensated for streaming services. Industry committee looked at that last term. Could you maybe comment on the importance of getting compensation to the artists?
Well, they're important, but as I said, I mean, there are a lot of expenses right now that we are facing, and the artist is one of them. But we have a lot of expenses with just keeping our teams together. So this is a huge challenge, and I see a lot of festivals and events are going virtual, and I salute that. But there's nothing like in-presence festival.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And we will now go to MP Dreeshen. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just to each of the witnesses, like every other community across Canada, the tourism sector here in Alberta has been financially decimated by this pandemic. Cancellation of rodeos, of conventions, sporting events, iconic exhibitions, and other tourist attractions. Our local community volunteer base is so frustrated, as well as the local hotel industry. And as the Tourism Association of Canada pointed out in their recent survey, many hotels and other tourism businesses will likely have to close their doors permanently without immediate financial assistance. So one of the things that in my discussions with local hotel business people, what can we do so that we're ready if this happens again? Because shutting it down, we had opportunities, I know at the very beginning, talking about using hotels to help, with pandemic planning. I know that it was mentioned earlier that was something that had been done, but they want to make sure that they're ready for it. So I'm just with the Hotel Association, how do we see those activities that had taken place? How do we see them expand so that our hoteliers are going to have a bit of an idea how they might fit in if we have to go through this again?
So 2 answers to that question. One is, I think the government had to proceed with broad-based programming support. And we now find ourselves in this moment in time where tourism and the hotel sector look very different than every other sector. Every other sector is allowed to recover and we're not. And so, I think one of the learnings here is, if we get a liquidity structure in place that allows us to cover our fixed costs, that would be a good learning. And that's something that we could easily resurrect the next time around. Understanding that, any support from government, like the wage subsidy, would need to have different parameters in a sector like this than it does in the other. So I think we will learn some of those elements as part of this. And then as far as other ways for us to survive, or we will be ready to support the needs of public health and provide shelter, et cetera, as we did in the last iteration. And so.
Well, thank you very much, and I think that's really the point. But we'll be better prepared for it this time, and I think that's the critical part. Just speaking now to CAFE, as I mentioned earlier, the Alberta Association of Agricultural Societies is one of your members. Community volunteers. This is the part that is keeping our cultural heritage alive, and there's some serious frustration. Some of these events have been going on for over 100 years. They're in bad trouble. And so I'm just wondering if you could speak to some of the discussions you've had with your members so that we can look at how we can remain viable now and in the future, again, if something like this happens.
Yeah, this has really been a bit of a game changer for us. Thank you for this question. Our industry is based on mass gatherings, and that's what we know and what we can do. And so, yes, there have been situations before where mass gatherings have been restricted, but not in the past several years. And so looking at it now, our businesses, our industry is looking to diversify within our domestic tourism envelope, I would say. And so we're looking to do other activities. We're looking on a smaller scale at drive-ins and drive-through activities, but also focusing a bit more on agritourism and how we can continually support our local communities. So from a federal level, support to help us diversify our business model, as well as help us get our buildings up to par. I would say we have a lot of beautiful buildings. Some of them are heritage buildings, but to get them up to par so they could be used for multi-purpose functions would definitely help us in the future.
Thank you very much. And my third and final question, perhaps Mr. Grew, you could mention or go through this. We've known that a huge part of our nation's cultural landscape is the Canadian Football League. And the CFL has been a big part of our national identity for over 100 years with all the assistance that is going to other cultural icons. We just can't throw up our hands and abandon the organization that brings in hundreds of millions of dollars to communities every year. So does your organization see a role for the federal government in helping support this iconic part of not only our tourism industry, but also of our cultural heritage?
Well, thank you for the question. Business events around the Grey Cup is usually where we would focus our efforts. And then, of course, the festival side would have the Grey Cup side. Personally, and being a huge fan of the CFL and its cultural connection to Canada, I think it's extremely important that we support it and see it happen this year.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to throw in Go Owls Go. On that note, we'll now move to Mr. Longfield. You have the floor for 5 minutes. MP Longfield, you're on mute.
And I said, go Bombers, go. So I'll just repeat that. But I want to send my questions over to Ms. Greinel. And thank you for spending time of your holidays in this committee meeting and also supporting the hotel sector while you're doing that. I'm interested, and this is the industry committee, not the finance committee. So I know the finance committee is looking at financial models, but when you talk about liquidity, I've been working with local major chain in Guelph, as well as bed and breakfast in Guelph and conference center in Guelph. Very different business models, but they all rely on visitors, of course, and on the sometimes in terms of the hotel and the conference center, of the rental of the space and then the food and service goes along with it. And quite often, number one, provides the profit for the organization more than room rentals. And number two, there are deposits that are being paid by not-for-profits or by weddings that are not going to happen. And in the next fiscal year, those deposits are still sitting on the books and will affect cash flow. So could you maybe speak to the liquidity piece? I know we've had loans through BDC and EDC, usually with a credit union. As you pointed out, banks are not usually financing hotels. Could you maybe just expand on the liquidity just a little bit for us, please? Just understand how that industry works.
Yes, with pleasure. So the hotel industry is asset based, and so when you go to the bank and you apply for a loan, it's not like you rent a facilities and they only look at cash flow. They look at the actual value of the property. And as I indicated earlier, the biggest challenge is that they just can't seem to put their finger on what is that hotel worth today. And that is the deepest fatal flaw in the BCAP program that we have been able to pinpoint throughout this process. And to answer your question about cash flow, based on our analysis of a 100-room hotel, over a 12-month horizon, they would need $600,000 in cash, and that is assuming that the CEWS that already builds in the assumption that the CEWS program will be in effect until December at the rate that it is already scheduled to be reduced, and there are no other programs that are really relevant in terms of relief.
I'm thinking of Farm Credit Canada as an example from outside of this conversation, provides cash flow financing for farmers where they're capital intensive and they have cash flow issues. They can go for special types of financing just to deal with cash flow issues. Is there some similar program within the hotel industry, or is that something that we need to be recommending as part of our report?
Oh, I think it needs to be recommended. I think it needs to go through the financial institutions. We have studied this at length over the course of the last 3 or 4 months. We've been working very closely with Minister Ng's office and Minister Jolie's office, bringing in financial experts to really break down what the challenge is here and what is happening. Our key recommendation is that it needs to go through the financial institutions, but it needs to be 100% backed by the government. Otherwise, the government would have to build a separate, system like the one that you're referencing. It doesn't exist today, and time is critically of the essence here.
Thank you. And I'm going to go to a smaller market. The smaller market size is the bed and breakfast. And we have a bed and breakfast in Guelph that had 2 visitors booked for the entire season. They were going to be coming up from the United States. That's not going to happen now. And which for very good reason, we want to keep our communities safe, and we have to watch who we allow into the country, how we allow in, but that has a major impact on the smaller businesses that in this case will be using their personal bank account as the way to finance their business. And because they're using a personal bank account, they don't get access to other services. So any short comment on that?
Well, I would just say that yes, you are absolutely right. But that is not just true of the bed and breakfast. In fact, most of Canada's hotel industry is owned by someone like a comparably small business in a community. I think probably all of the MPs on this call would know a local hotel owner who's invested all of their livelihood. And what's happening right now with the BCAP program is that they're being asked for personal guarantees against the additional 20% risk that is currently on the bank's shoulders under the BCAP program. And the hotel owners are just not, these small businesses, and I would say it's 70% small businesses in the hotel sector. So it is a critical challenge.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Donc, le prochain tour, c'est député Blanchette Jonca. Vous avez la parole.
Mr. Blanchette Jonquière, plutôt, you have the floor, 5 minutes. Thank you to our witnesses. I'd just like to get some perspective on the industry in Quebec. It's 400,000 million, involves 30,000 businesses and employs many thousands of Quebecers. The 2/3, though, of them are within the regions of Quebec and Montreal. For the majority, they are small businesses. More than 80% of these businesses have fewer than 20 employees. So, Mr. Hamel, when you were talking about liquidity problems and the possible moratorium to help them, we know that these small difficulties face great hurdles when they need liquidity. Do you feel that enough is being done for these industries? And you mentioned earlier about the possible amending of the program to help the regions recover. Do you believe that something could be done there? We know it's very important for the tourism industry, but given the new criteria of the wage subsidy and given the situation in Quebec for the tourism industry, because it's this is all background. So, Mr. Hamel, do you think that there will be a negative impact to the new criteria that have been set out by the government for that program? Thank you for your question. I know it's a major impact for the tourism industry in terms of the subsidy. It is really the tourism industry that has gotten support, 75% support for its workers, but as of September, it will be diminished and it'll be almost at zero by the end of November. These summer businesses will not have the wherewithal to survive the winter. And those that operate ski operations in Canada will, outside of Quebec, they won't have people coming into Quebec from outside of Quebec, Canadians, or international visitors. So it's going to be very marginal. Businesses will not be able to support their workers who work in tourism. What we're asking is this: the federal government absolutely has to review the conditions of that program. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Blanchette Jonca. I told you 5 minutes, but it was only a 2.5-minute turn that you were entitled to.
MP Massa, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes. MP Massé?
Je peux m'offrir pour prendre son tour, si vous voulez, Madame la Présidente.
If you like, I can take his turn, Madam Chair.
Come back to him once we think we've lost him, but we will come back to him. So I will start the third round. I know we are late. We are a little late, but we are going to try to complete a third round. With that, we'll go to Mr. Patzer. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wondering how many more, before I get on the clock here, how many more slots are there going to be total here? Because I think we have another colleague that was expecting a round as well.
Exactly. So for this round, we're going to try to complete the complete round. So we will have 2 slots for the Conservatives, 2 slots for the Liberals, 1 for the Bloc. We'll actually have 1 for the Bloc and 2 for the Mr. Massé because he just missed a round.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, actually, I see him. So we will actually go to Mr. Massé. My apologies. I will start the clock. Mr. Massé, you have 2.5 minutes, and then we will go to MP Patzer.
And Madam Chair, we'll go to MP Richards instead of me first, and then I will take the last Conservative round.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I didn't get it on in time. The reason I asked the question I had from before and gave you the details, because that's like a program that could be acted right now, but it doesn't really get to the depth of the problem here with regards to where the industry's at. And Ms. Greinel, I'd like to ask you a question. And with regards to the hotels themselves, especially the smaller owners, if they don't get this type of support now, are they basically just going to be a lot of bankruptcies and units put out on the market? And if that's the case, should we be looking at something even bolder to deal with that? Because one way or another, they're going to default. So give us a snapshot as to how significant that is.
You're absolutely right. It's going to be the smallest members that go under first, and based on our member survey, it'll go up from there. And there's a direct correlation between cash flow in terms of when it runs out and the size of businesses. If there is nothing done, we anticipate that at least 25%, likely more than that, of our sector will go under. And depending on how long this is sustained, it could be even longer than that. We do believe it needs to be bold. We need to fix, we put a 5-point plan in front of the government that I think you have in front of you that
yes.
We'd like to see support in each of those areas. Liquidity needs to be fixed in the next, we have a matter of weeks ahead of us. And then we do want to see forgiveness within those loan programs, but we need the infrastructure in place first. So thank you for the opportunity to once again underscore how critical this is.
Yeah, and I guess this is going to be the big challenge for the government. If we don't deal with this right now, then we'll have a bunch of failed assets around the country. And we've all been on those smaller roads and seen old hotels boarded up and left in a state of disrepair, which is not good for renewed tourism, which is not good for municipal tax bases. This is a bigger snowball effect that will get even compounded. So backstopping the loans from the federal government, I can see the sense in that. If not, then we would actually even have to come up with some type of maybe an alternative housing type strategy using the units for a different social purpose if we're going to actually have them either decrepitly run to the ground. Sorry, I'm out of time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We will start the third round and we are trying again. MP Richards, we are hopeful. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Let's hope third time's a charm, Madam Chair. Is that better? All right, there we go. So I will just start by reiterating what I said earlier, that it is really unfortunate that there is only going to be one meeting, it seems, on this incredibly important industry for our country. And that we've jammed so many witnesses in that it's hard to get questions to all of you. So I do hope that any others in the tourism industry are out there who are listening and would like to have this opportunity will take the suggestion made by my colleague Tracy Gray and write to the chair and the clerk and request that opportunity because it is incredibly important. Having said that, I've got a couple of questions I'd like to get a chance to ask, and I want to get a chance to ask a few of you each of the questions. So I'll start with the first question, which will be for Cafe or Fame, whichever of you would like to take it. Meetings mean business, and then TIAC as well. And then hopefully there'll be time for a second question to the Hotel Association and the Association Restauration Quebec. But I'll start with the first question, which is, so a few of you alluded to in your opening comments or mentioned in your opening comments, the idea that the tourism industry is very different than almost any other industry that we're dealing with coming out of this pandemic, because of the fact it was first hit, hardest hit, and it will be the longest recovery. And many of you mentioned, the idea of next spring being sort of that time, because of the fact that it's a seasonal industry in many places. And for things like events and festivals, it means 2 years essentially without revenues. So it is a very long period of time for a business, especially when many of these businesses are small businesses or in some cases nonprofits, to be able to sustain themselves. So what I wanted to do, and it would have been better placed at the initial round when I would have been asking it, but because you alluded to it, I'd like to ask those three organizations if you could give us just 30 seconds each to explain just a little bit more to those who aren't as familiar with the industry as myself or others who are on here, why exactly the tourism industry is different and what the impacts are, and the fact that the government is treating the tourism industry the same as other small businesses that maybe have an opportunity to either continue to carry on business in a different fashion or can turn things back on more quickly. So maybe ask Cafe or Fame first, then Meetings Mean Business, and then TIAC to just give us 30 seconds each on to explain that to those who are less familiar with the industry.
Sure. You know what? I've started for this entire time, so I'll hand it over to Monsieur Roy to start, and then if there's a second or two, I'll pop in.
Oh, thanks, Christina. Well, the thing that's so specific to festivals and events is the fact that we get revenues on a period of 3 to 10 days per year, most of the time. So now that the events are canceled, we don't get any revenues, and the next time we'll be getting revenues will be when we'll put tickets on sale next year or during the events itself. So that's the main challenge that we face, and we are looking forward for specific help in our sector.
And just a quick addition there, I think it's about the economic impact on the communities in the town. So when Formula One comes to town, it's helping everyone. It's helping the entire tourism industry. And that goes right down to my local fair, Expo Ormstown here. It goes from 3,000 people to 20,000 people. That helps the restaurants, the hotels, the print shop, everyone.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Grew?
Yes, thank you for the question. I would just suggest that with conventions and conferences, as we attract, it's usually a 3 to 5 year window to attract some of these events to Canada. With being shut down, we're losing some probably for the next 10 years because they go on to cycles to other parts of the world. So we lose them. It's not simply they'll push to next year, it's that they won't be back for 10 years in some cases. So, and we've had a really, really good couple of years in this space of attracting great events to Canada. And those are pretty much, many of the ones that we're going to run this year and going to run next year are either being fully canceled as of this year or into next year now, again, being questioned as to whether or not they'll happen. So those are, the international events are very challenging. And obviously it takes us, we need a window, and we talked about this earlier, a window of time to see when we might be able to reopen for those events because they're so critical to our economy. But then of course there's local events, there's regional events, and there's Canadian events. Those ones, having Canadians move around to go to conferences, we believe can be done safely, and we believe it could be done very effectively.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Bell from TIAC?
Yes, hello, thank you, Mr. Richards. I hope you can hear me. So I think in terms of what's different about tourism, first of all, tourism is found in every single region in Canada, and I don't know of many industries that could actually say that they are present from coast to coast to coast. So we are in every single riding. We also have many small businesses and many seasonal businesses. So even for a year-round business that's open, 12 months in the year, we depend on a very small window, or it's maybe disproportionate in terms of how we garner our revenues, because of course the high season, which is the summer, and for winter tourism operators would be the winter months. You have a very small window in which you can garner revenues and stay afloat. So this
thank you.
this is a big problem.
Unfortunately, that's all. You're over time again, Madame Bell. Sorry about that, but I wanted to make sure Mr. Richards got a good chunk of time as he kept having trouble with technical difficulties.
Got it.
With that, we will now move to MP Johari. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to all the witnesses. I'd like to commend you on your recommendations. The recommendations were quite specific, sector-based, and you also presented the point of view of why some of the programs still have opportunity for improvement vis-a-vis the sector you're in. As I was listening to all the witnesses, there is another stakeholder group in this equation that we need to consider, and those are the consumers. Many of you have indicated, talked about some of the survey that's been done by your organization, and I'd like to get some insight into any of these surveys may have probed into the consumer sensitivity, whether they're visitors from abroad, visitors from U.S., or visitors from other provinces, or visitors from local visitors. And what have you observed from the attitude and from the motivation of these consumers? It will be able to give us a balanced view of the industry as well as the consumers. I'd like to start actually by Tourism Industry Association and Madame Bell. Have any of your studies indicated anything regarding consumers' behavior or consumers' sentiment?
We have not specifically done consumer sentiment surveys because we've been focused on trying to save our industry. So our surveys are focused on trying to figure out where the industry is. But I do know that a number of organizations like Destination Canada or other pollsters, for instance, have done surveys peering into consumer attitudes.
Meeting Means Business Canada, have you guys done any survey on that?
No, we would be the same. The only one I would point to, as well as the Canadian Travel and Tourism Roundtable, which a number of us sit on, has looked at some data on sentiment for travel, and that across the country. I don't know the stats on it. My apologies, but unless Susie
Hotel
or
Association of Canada. Have you guys done any survey?
We've not specifically surveyed that topic either, but I know the Conference Board of Canada has, and so we'd be happy to send that forward to the committee.
So if I let's say go outside the norm and say that let's assume there's a sentiment around hesitancy and lower consumer motivation to be able to fully embrace as we reopen the economy. Naturally, there's a huge impact on the industry, and them being another part of the equation and coming out and embracing this reopening. To what extent all the recommendation that you have spent a lot of time in and are so justified, how would that be impacted? Association Restaurants Quebec or Canadian Association of Fair and Exhibition, you guys want to jump in on that one?
I can give you an answer in French, since we have interpretation. We don't have information on consumers, but we can tell you that half of the restaurant owners that we polled found that there was at least 40% less in terms of revenue that they normally have in June and July. So 40% less. I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Vézina. Can you put the microphone closer to your mouth? So, but one of the data that we are aware of, the 40% sales. So they're down 60% over the previous year in terms of sales, in terms of consumers that want to go eat in their restaurants. And perhaps you could suspend the sales tax for tourism, or perhaps give a tax credit for tourism.
And I want to ask a question that, given the fact that this is an issue, I believe this is an issue. The rate that the consumer feel confident to come out is going to be an issue, and is going to be an ongoing issue for a while. What measures can the federal government do? And what measures can other levels? Yes, I was hoping that you put up your hand and answer that question. Thank you. Go ahead.
You know, first of all, our industries put in place a program called Safe Stay. It's North American based. It's incorporating all of the public health recommendations into hotel practices. But to answer your question directly, one of the things the government can do to help is to help us change the narrative that you can leave your house and you're not going to die if you do it. This is something that continues to be, and look, none of us are suggesting that we want to see an increase. We have to do this responsibly, but I think we've been responsible. I think people can be responsible, and to the extent that the government can support that would be helpful.
Thank you. We now move to MP Patzer. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before I begin, I just want to give notice of a motion, which I will read into the record here, that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the Standing Committee on Industry, Science, and Technology invite the Privacy Commissioner to testify regarding the development and ongoing operation of the recently released COVID Alert contact tracing application. And I will move into my questions then. So this question will go to the Hotel Association or to the Tourism Industry Association. Anybody can answer really if you want, but I'm just curious to know, as far as insurance goes in your industries, has there been any issues with that? And in particular, I'm wondering about the business interruption insurance. Were there anybody that had applied for that or had that already in the suite of insurance packages that exist?
Sure, I can jump in on that. Yes, there are two issues with insurance. One is that our hotels that have paid business interruption insurance are not getting covered. So that's a big challenge. And the other challenge is that the insurance companies are now telling us effective December, they're not going to cover us at all because we're too much of a risk. And so you can't run a hotel without without commercial insurance. So it is a huge issue, but it is a provincial one, and it is one that our colleagues are working on. Is
there anybody else that wants to chip into that one as well, or?
Essentially, I'm hearing the absolute same thing. So.
As am I.
To add up, it's the same thing for restaurants, that not many policy covers for the interruption of business.
Thank you for that. I'm going to move into back to the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. One of the things that we have seen as far as from the federal government is there was some financial relief for tourism industry. In particular, it was $46 million that went to Quebec and the Maritimes. But in my province of Saskatchewan, we only received $1.5 million for relief within the tourism sector. Just kind of going over some different numbers, for the percentage of employment in Saskatchewan for tourism, it's 3.2%, which actually is identical to Ontario. It compares Newfoundland, Labrador, New Brunswick to Quebec. PEI and Nova Scotia are obviously higher on the spectrum than everybody else. I'm just wondering, why do you think it is that such a huge amount went out east, but so little out west?
Thank you for asking that question. It is an issue that we have been raising with the minister and with government. It was very uneven. I think what happened is that the RRF program was rolled out, but not on a national. The regional development agencies doled out those funds in those regions, and unfortunately, after everything was said and done, we did see that there were far fewer grants or loans out in the Western provinces. So we are still working on that with the minister's office to see if there's anything that can be done. But essentially, each of the RDAs, the regional development agencies, deal with their own stakeholders. So there wasn't a national set of rules across the board for each of those agencies.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, I was just wondering because I've got companies like Trio 6 in Cypress Hills Park, Harvest Eatery. It's a restaurant down in Shaunavon, the Grasslands National Park. They're all award-winning businesses. As well as outside of my riding up by Saskatoon, we've got the Wanuskewin Heritage Park, which actually, for the first time in 150 years, a baby bison was born on ancestral land. So, the Saskatchewan tourism industry has so much to offer. It's not just an afterthought. It's actually something we're extremely proud of around here. Yeah, so just wondering, when we're talking to these different industries, I'm just wondering if there's, do they these people specifically, do they need to apply to these RDAs, or what's the order that it works for them to be able to get funding, or to get a better demand for funding if there's such a small number coming from the RDAs themselves?
Yes, the individual businesses would have to apply for funding once it's announced, and that did happen. I just heard, in fact, a couple of days ago that in BC, for example, there were 42 applications that went to Western Diversification, and they were all denied. So it wasn't simply one of the Western provinces. We are trying to get to the bottom of this and to see if anything can be done to ensure that the Western provinces also receive funding, certainly on the tourism in the tourism industry.
Okay. Yeah, and just kind of going to my colleague from the NDP. I mean, he was talking about the Canada Summer Jobs Program earlier there, and I've got a lot of tourism-based businesses in the riding that specifically utilize that program. There is that something that's across Canada. Is it a vastly used program across Canada? Sorry, within the context of tourism per se.
I think it's used in certain areas, but it's certainly not at the top of our priority in terms of things that need to be fixed now.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to MP Erskine Smith. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thanks very much. I first just wanted to say that I strongly support Mr. Patzer's motion. I did see online the other day that True North and Anthony Furey roundly embarrassed themselves by suggesting that the government was tracking everyone everywhere they go. So it'd be good to get on the record from someone intelligent and thoughtful on this issue, including the Privacy Commissioner. And with that, I want to share my time with Mr. Longfield.
Unmute. Thank you. It's back to me. I wanted to start with Ms. Greinall again, just to follow up on one or two things, and then switch over to Ms. Bell. When I'm Ms. Greinall, looking at the ownership of hotels, I think you brought up a key point that I'd like to try and make sure that we have on the record, and that is that even the hotel chains, the Delta Hotel in Guelph, as an example, is owned by a local partnership group. And that when we think of hotel chains, we think that there's a lot of money behind them and that somehow they're financed by some central corporation. Could you maybe put something on the record for us on ownership of the larger hotels in each community?
With pleasure. You are correct that there is a misconception about the hotel industry. When you see one of those brands, you assume that this big American chain owns that property and has access to all sorts of liquidity. The reverse is true. These are all Canadian-owned companies. The majority of them, 83%, are small, would fit the government definition of being small and medium-sized businesses. The brands this is a franchise model. So you would own a hotel and you would decide, do I go it alone and be an independent hotel, or do I get the brand behind me, which is essentially a marketing engine? And so yes, these are Canadian-owned small businesses in every riding in the country.
Right, thank you. And local administration and some fixed costs are covered possibly by corporations, but they also support not-for-profits. They support baseball teams. They contribute into our communities with Canadian dollars, and I think it's important to highlight that.
Critical infrastructure, yes.
Thank you. And thanks again for staying at one. But I guess that's what you do. And Ms. Bell, I'm thinking of, thank you for all of the work that you do behind the scenes with the different organizations that you contribute to. I'm interested in how Canada stacks up in terms of our tourism policy, what other countries might be doing that we haven't considered, if you have any of that, either through TIAC work or other work that you've been doing, and how we need to coordinate Canadian policies with other countries, since a lot of travelers don't just come to Canada, they go to other countries as well. Over to Ms. Bell for that, please.
Thank you for asking.
And anybody else can contribute. Thank you.
Thank you for asking the question. Well, every country has its own policies, so I mean, we could spend hours talking about that. What we have seen since the pandemic is a great deal of international countries putting measures in place, funding, grants, incentives to encourage people to travel. In fact, we're filing a tax credit proposal to encourage Canadians to travel in Canada. But we could file something with you that goes through what the policies are across the board internationally. So I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. That would be helpful for our reporting. Right. Does anybody else have an international piece that they'd like to bring in the last minute that we have?
If I may, very short.
Thank you, Mr.
The exhibition space, the convention space is very international, and everybody is looking at what everybody else is doing. Europe has opened up quite a bit more than we have to exhibitions and conferences, so they are out ahead of the protocols, which, by the way, task forces across our country have been working on as well to put in place safe protocols to reopen. So there's a lot we can learn from that.
And as Canada, if we can stay ahead on the curve and keep our country safe, we should be in a competitive position to attract Europe.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, failing any else, I see the red card coming up. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for great testimony. I really, really appreciate you doing that.
Thank you very much. La prochaine tour, c'est député Lemire. Vous avez 2 minutes et demie.
Now the next turn goes to Member Lemire. You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. In the tourism industry, there is always an important actor. Promoters. There are also those who make sure that they're able to promote tourism in their regions. The work done by regional tourism associations who work hard means that we are in a cooperative mode instead of a competitive mode. It means that the ecosystem for tourism in Abitibi-Témiscamingue is an interesting one. We have to develop tourism based on what our territory needs. It's important to have the human resources that we need to establish relationships between different sectors and the fishing cabins, for example. It's important to have collaboration with Ski-Doo or other groups that use recreative vehicles. So it's important for us to have partnerships to ensure the longevity of these associations. My question goes to the Quebec Industry Alliance. Do you think that now more than ever it is necessary to top up the funding to make sure that funding will be available for regional tourism associations? Yes, absolutely. More than ever, it is important for us to work together. Mr. Amel, could you move your microphone closer to your mouth? Yes. So the tourism industry needs to work together more than ever. We currently work very well together. The provinces work very well with Charlotte's team, but the regions have to do the same. All the regions need to mobilize to work towards this common goal, because tomorrow morning, most countries are going to reopen and most of the tourism opportunities will be on a global scale. It's important for us to also have tourism offerings that meet the new reality. I would also like to congratulate all the members of the industry. Thank you for working together, for cooperating, and for reaching out to all sorts of associations. We are facing an interesting challenge, but I would like to commend you on the work that you've done so far. Thank you very much.
Questions will go to MP Massé. You have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as New Democrats would also support the Privacy Commissioner, so hopefully that motion does come forward, because it would be good for a lot of different reasons. I want to thank Mr. Lemire for bringing this to the committee's attention, the tourism sector. I mean, what I've heard was a little bit disturbing in the sense that there's been ongoing discussions and negotiations with the government, but it's almost been like a used couch you've been put to the curbside to see what's going to happen next. This is not a strategy right now that the sector has. And that's what I think you do need is a special sectorial strategy. I think you're in unique situations because culture and human behavior has to be shifted far more difficultly in your industry. And Mr. Benzina, my father and mother-in-law, they used to have a small Chinese restaurant, and I can just imagine the overhead and the margins won't cover the lack of available space they'll be able to use probably now for a long period of time. So Windsor just came out of stage 2, where today it was announced we're actually going to stage 3. And what's the challenge of carrying that extra bulk space, that's dead space in a restaurant that used to actually be a profitable space for turnover?
Main problem is that we don't use that space because of the social distancing measures that we need to run at 50% capacity, not at full capacity. So it's less sale. Like I said before, if we see the number of sales that we have done in June 2020 compared to last year, it's 40%. It's less than 60% sales that we lost because of the pandemic, because consumer doesn't go in. So that's the problem. It's translated in loss of sales, and we pay the same rent, and that's also the problem.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I know that's the end, and I'll leave it at that. And thank all the witnesses for being here, and thank you, Madam Chair, for getting us through the technical problems we had today. But appreciate the time we've had.
Thank you so much, and I want to reiterate our thanks to the witnesses for being there, and to the members, the analysts, the translators, IT group for, again, their patience in making sure that today was possible. And as members of Parliament, we all have an opportunity to make sure that we also promote our local tourism industry. And so reiterate that, say to your constituents that, think of traveling local, stay home, and visit la belle province, in our case, and support your local restaurants and hotels. And we'll all get through this together. C'est tous ensemble. Merci beaucoup. And with that, I call this meeting adjourned. Merci.
Merci tout le monde.